Hello, Shannon. Welcome to the Mentally About Us podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Thanks so much for having me, Justine. I'm really excited to be here.
This is going to be a great conversation because we're going to be talking about personality, being overwhelmed. First of all, the first thing I thought of when I look at your website, I'm like, man, she is really organized. I love that. I love the color scheme. I also took your personality quiz, by the way, and it's very thorough. Not thorough. Oh, it's very, well, yeah, that too. Well, yeah, it's very detailed. Like that's the word I was like looking for. But yeah, no, I took that. I was like, let me see how my personality is, and it's definitely very accurate. And I also see that you specialize a lot too in like borderline personality disorder, which is a big topic. Let's get into you. I want to know more about you. We're gonna be talking about feeling overwhelmed. So, can you tell me a time, or actually, let's go a little bit deeper in the back, because there's always a reason why somebody feels overwhelmed. So where do you think that would come from you, like childhood and such?
Yeah, I was thinking about that a little bit this morning when I was kind of thinking about what I would talk about today, especially like personal stuff. And currently I would describe myself as a pretty like conscientious, I like things how I like them, possibly a little rigid person, but I wasn't always like that. And so, in my childhood, I was pretty shy and I was not really a great student. I
Really?
People don't really believe me when they meet me now and
I
I
don't.
tell them that. So like my senior year of high school, I actually like failed math for the year and had to retake it,
Hmm.
which like people are shocked to know. And I'm pretty outgoing now, and so people I think are pretty surprised to hear that I used to be pretty shy and would hang back and observed. It wasn't until I got to college and was like, oh, I need to like figure out something to do with my life, that I started to really apply myself, but very narrowly in my psychology classes because it was something that interested me. And I think like as there was a larger contrast between how I used to be and the sort of like praise and reward that I was getting for starting to perform well, I think that's great because it put me on this trajectory to be a pretty, a successful professional. But I think it
Hmm.
also put me getting to now answering your question about overwhelm. I think it also put me on a hamster wheel, right? Where it felt so different and so reinforcing to have people recognize me for the things that I was doing, but it also made me feel like I was only as good as my last accomplishment and that there was always something else that I needed to do.
I wasn't the best student either. I started getting a little bit better when I was like a junior, senior. I wasn't like an honors or going into AP classes or anything like that. But if you see my grades from like elementary school, like I literally almost did not graduate. And you want to know what class that kept me back? It's religion. I was in a Catholic school and I got like a D in religion. That says a lot about me, right? But I was like, oh my God, if I don't like graduate with my class because of that, but I got a D, so I passed for that. When you were, first of all, math is, I hate math. Math is, I just feel like everybody, unless you're like a math whiz or just kind of have that brain, if you know what I mean, I feel like everyone just sucks at math. Like, especially like what we learn in high school that like doesn't even matter. Like, I'm trying to
Right.
think
You
of,
don't get a lot of like practical application of like, I don't know, like sine and cosine. I don't know where that's like pulling out of the archive because I don't actually really remember what those things are.
I can't even think about what we learned. Like, there's like something about a theorem, like cadastral theorem. I have no idea. And the fact that I can't even remember what we learned, like, that's just really sad. Like, all those poor people with their tax dollars paying for education, they're like, we can't even remember what we even learned.
I know. I wish we could learn math that's like how interest rates work because that would have saved me
That'd be
some grief.
good. I feel like that would be fantastic. There's not really like finance classes or anything like that. Like, at least like in high school or whatever. Like that's what we need because a lot of people, obviously struggle with their finances and they don't have to if they know money management and such. So that's like our economy could be so much better if people like, had that knowledge and there'd be less people in poverty in my opinion. But when you were in high school, did they have like any psychology classes?
They actually did. I took a psychology class my senior year, and basically we just like studied cults the entire time.
No way.
It's so like not a thing that once I got into psychology as a field, we really talk about that much, but
That is so
it was pretty fun at
funny.
the time.
No way. So you just talk, I mean, that's actually kind of intriguing to study cults. And so you didn't do too well in high school, and then when you were in college you did better, and what you do now is like not easy for, most people. So do you feel like you had to prove something to people? Cuz I know it's great to be praised and it makes you want to keep doing the same thing. Like, do you think like deep down, at least for me, that's I've discovered about myself, where I feel like I always have to prove somebody.
Yes, 100%. So, for a little bit of context too, so I'm from Connecticut originally, and I grew up in like a pretty wealthy, like kind of suburban area, but that was not my situation. And so I felt like I really didn't fit in super well. And I felt like people really underestimated me. And I think that
Mhm.
makes sense because I wasn't really I knew that I was smart and that I had things to offer the world, but I also was just like, what's the point of this thing that I'm being asked to do right now? I felt like people really like underestimated me when I was growing up. And again, like, I mean, for good reason, because I really didn't do things that I didn't understand, like why I was being asked to do them. And so it looked like maybe I didn't care or I didn't, or that I wasn't, that I wasn't that smart.
Mhm.
But I distinctly remember, like I remember in 4th grade, I had mentioned to my teacher that I thought maybe I'll be a teacher, and she was like, "You?"
What a
And so,
jerk.
so there have been like little things like that throughout my life. And, I think I'm a first generation college student in a place where and I grew up in a place where not a lot of people were. So I did feel like I had something to prove. And it's funny that you asked that question because I'm always joking with my husband about how the title of my next book is going to be Fuck You Energy. I did it because of spite.
Do it. Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to bring up, and it was kind of like a great thing that I want to jump off, is talking about like what like women and how we have like extra pressure on us.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this episode are like for the women. I mean, there's like literally like 75%, 80% of my audience are women. So I'm like, this episode are for the girlies here. Do you believe it's like 10 times worse for women, that it's like they already look down at us and it's like now we feel like, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think of where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of things that make success challenging for women. I think there are some circles where you kind of have to apologize for your success or like not
Mm,
make other people feel threatened by your success.
true.
And so you really have to think about, so in addition to working really hard at your craft, whatever your job is, you have to be thinking about like how you're coming across to people that might be a little fragile. And that's like mental work, right? So that's on top of all the other stuff that you're doing. There are studies that show that even though most like families in America have dual earners, right? Like both partners are working, the house care and child care fall disproportionately to children. And I know
Yeah.
this is not like rocket science, like most people know this, especially if you're a woman, you definitely know it.
Yeah, I live in the US too. I know in some countries it's a little bit different where they respect women
Mhm.
more. Depends. But the
Yeah, right. I
US, we
think
can
probably better in
speak on
like
the US.
Scandinavia. So right. And so there is this pressure, I think, whether spoken or unspoken, to have it all, right? It's
Yeah.
the to be a good mom, and not just a good mom, a perfect mom, right? To be an attentive spouse or partner, to perform really well at work, but not too well that you're making other people feel uncomfortable with your success, not being assertive, but not too assertive that people think that you're aggressive. And so it's a lot of stuff to carry all the time. And I
So
think like
stressful.
sometimes other women can be like the not the worst, but I think like can be responsible for upholding some of this system. It's like, the kind of the stereotype of like the PTA mom that's like, "Oh, so and so is not going to help us with this thing, where it's like, oh my gosh, but I have all these other things to do, right?
Oh my God.
Where we're expected to keep all these balls in the
Just listening to that, realizing, man, that sounds stressful. I mean, like, I'm not like at that point in my life right now where I'm like going like PDA meetings. I don't even have a
air. Right.
kid. So if I was showing up at a PDA meeting, I think that'd be a little concerned. They may have to call the cops. And so on the other side of the spectrum, like some you were mentioning how some women have to pretty much kind of step out the spotlight or not just kind of like perform at their best ability because they're afraid of how people are going to think or feel. So the other side of the spectrum, there's people who are a perfectionist. I want to get into that. I want to understand that
Yeah.
perfectionism. I'm like not like that at all. I'm like complete opposite. And the other girl who does mentally a badass with me, her name is Ariel, and she's a perfectionist. She's open about it, so I can talk about it. But like oh my god, she is a perfectionist. I'm trying to understand that because naturally I want to be like, hey, can we like get through this together? But yeah, she's also the one that like because you mentioned you were looking at the merch, like she's the one who drew all of that, like that's all her, and she's the one who did the website. Like you can tell, like it's polished and stuff. So which comes in handy for what we're doing. For me, I'm not like that at all. I could be a little messy sometimes, but
It's
except when
for
I
good
get to the
flow and
editing.
conversation.
So where does this stem from? Like how does this happen? Like how does this develop?
Yeah. Yeah. So often we see perfectionism in women, probably a higher proportion in women than men. I think, as we're growing up, a lot of times, like little girls are praised for, like, oh, you're a good girl. You did a good job. That's wonderful. And that kind of gets ingrained. In terms of like what maintains perfectionism, I think of it as an anxiety process. So
Mm,
it's kind of fear of what will happen if you don't perform in a way that is up to your standards, and your standards
really?
are much higher than most people's. And so there's this fear, right? That like, if I don't give 110%, if I don't check this email I'm going to send, no fewer than 10 times, that there might be a typo in it. And if there's a typo in it, I will lose all esteem from the person that I'm sending that email to. And because perfectionist people don't tend to make a ton of mistakes because they are being so like overly attentive to things, they don't actually have any data on what happens when they do mess up, which is like literally nothing.
Really? And
Yeah,
mine's like the
usually,
total
right? Like, I mean,
opposite.
if I can think about the number of times that I've sent an email with a typo in it, which is like literally hundreds. And I don't know that that's really messed with my professional career.
Oh my gosh. I honestly, this is something new that I've learned. I think I'm gonna tell her this. It's like not having any like data of what's gonna happen. It's like the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You're so right. And like for me, like, my problem is that every time I mess up, I do have anxiety with messing up, but mine's different. Is that I know what's gonna happen after because I grew up in a household where it was like very hostile and even like in the schools, like when I mess up there, like I'm surprised like luckily I wasn't in the time where the nuns would like hit you with a ruler, but like they were still pretty scary at moments and such. Mine's like total opposite. Like I would mess up a lot as a child, and I would be like mistreated and crying and call them. One time I was called a mistake in like life or whatever. Like so different. Oh my god! Like how the universe just like put us together. We're just like complete polar opposites, and it's like I guess I personally just didn't understand. Now I get it. Oh my god, I'm gonna have a conversation with her after this and be like, because obviously she's trying to work through it because when she is a perfectionist, it there's moments where it could hold us back because something needs to be done, and I'm kind of just like, okay, but she would just, at the back of her head, she needs it to be perfect. And now I just realized because she just recently redid our website, and she texted me in the morning. She was like, "Oh, I was up all night, so I decided to just do our website." And I look at the website, I'm just looking through it, and there was a section where it says like, "Check out our podcast." It says, "Check out podcast."
I mean, that's what happens when you're working through the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly. So like I screenshot it and I was like, I can tell you were up all night. And she was like, oh. But you know what? I mean, I guess that was kind of a good thing because she did make a mistake. And here I am making fun of her. So I don't know if that's really a good thing. But she knows I mean well. I wasn't like being
Right,
like,
right. In like a
Ariel,
loving
oh
and
my
teasing
God.
way.
Like my gosh, that I'm actually glad that happened, and I'm glad she made a mistake.
You gave her
Just
some data.
so she can see that I'm not gonna punch her in the face, so she's not scared.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I would text her and be like, I was like, I hope you didn't get upset when I like kind of called you out and just like making fun of her. I'm like, I can tell you that was like the first thing I said back to her. I wasn't like, oh, this website looks fantastic. It was more like, I can see you were up all night. Look at this, check out podcast. And then yesterday I actually did point something else out because when you were looking at our website, I was like, let me just take a look at it too. I don't know, it's just for fun. And I know there was like a section where it was like categorized like our sweatshirts, our shirts, and whatever. And everything else was like very like the color scheme was nice. It was like purple, black, whatever. And then there was like the sweater, which was like like a brown color. And I was like, wait, like we can change this so it can look very like uniformed in a way. And so I told her to change that. And I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, I wonder if this is good for her or bad for her. I don't know what it is. Like, me just pointing things stuff out. I think I need to have a conversation with her. I'm going to see her tomorrow and be like, because another thing too is like, she is good at a lot of things like that I love. And I'm just like, oh, I love this. Like, this is so great. And like, I say this because it's true. But now I'm thinking, like, oh my God, I'm acting just like her. But it's crazy because this is like it's a good thing but also not at the same time because then it kind of like what's the right word for it, like re-engages or just kind of like
Mm.
you kind of see what I'm saying. Isn't that kind of weird
Totally. And I
thinking
think you're
like
describing like really well the fine line
enabling
between
that's
yes,
what it
you
is,
got
that's the word I
it.
get.
You're
Yes.
describing the fine line between like caring about something, right? Like being like wanting something to be of quality, being a high achiever in like a particular domain, and perfectionism. And that's like a very fine line. Things can be good enough, right? Like without having to be perfect, because a lot of
Hmm.
times perfectionism leads to procrastination. Like if I don't have the time to do it perfectly or, up to my standards, then I won't do it at all.
Yes, she does
Yeah.
that. I need to tell her later. I'm like, yo, we're talking shit about you on this podcast. Like, no, but yeah, she does that.
Mhm.
And I feel bad where I'm just like, hey, how's it going? Like,
Mhm.
did you finish this yet? But like as you were saying, it's just something she's struggling with, and I obviously gotta be patient with that. I just like I get frustrated because I'm just like, what can I do to help? You know what I mean? And there's times where I'm like, I say to her, like, do you want me to do this for you? Like, I just maybe she's overwhelmed with all the tasks, but she says, no, I can do it. So that also makes me think you're right. Like, it's not that she doesn't have the time or can't do it. She just has this fear, like, if it's not enough time, I'm not gonna do it if I feel like it's not gonna come out perfect.
Yeah. And I think you're
Wow.
describing another thing that can come up. I think for women, I think for perfectionists, right, which is asking for help or delegating.
Mm.
We're really conditioned not to ask for help, to be the person that people come to for help, right? I'm the person in my house where if my kids can't find something, they come to me, right? Like,
Mhm.
that role just feels really natural. And I think women fall into it really easily. And so whether it's at work or at home, it can be really tough for people to delegate. And, it doesn't necessarily say anything about, how she feels about your ability to do the things that she's not willing to delegate to you.
Yeah, no,
It has more to do with like, this is something I said I would take on. I have this vision for how I want it. It needs to be that way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think that she didn't. I wasn't like capable of it. I think. I mean, I don't know what was going through her mind at the time when she said that to me. But I just felt like, 'cause I know there's times where she is overwhelmed with tasks, and she's told me that. Like, if there's something else we're doing, she just like she has denied a couple of times because she has too much on her plate. So I think just from that in the past, I was just assuming like it could have been the same situation, even if she didn't like tell me that. So I was like, okay, let me take something off her plate. But it wasn't clearly it wasn't that. And then she eventually did like actually got it done pretty fast. But I'm thinking like maybe she just kind of felt like okay, Justine's probably like not pressuring, but she's kind of like being like, hey, you gonna get this done. Like, but what can like I guess like I mean at the end of the day, knowing we can't fix people. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh, I need to fix her or okay. I feel like that just sounds so bad, and that's not like you know what I mean. Because I'm also that kind of person where it's just like I have this like I need to help people. Like I feel like I have to help people. Like if someone's struggling with something, like I want to help people, but like I didn't know what to do. So like if I were to ask you that question, like I guess from your like expert and I mean you're licensed and everything. Like what in this case, like would you do to help someone who's a perfectionist that's struggling?
Yeah. So two things come to mind for me. I think when it has to do with any kind of like mental health thing, especially things that require the person to make changes to themselves, right? Sometimes they're like it's not that there aren't things that you can do to help. It's just that like the main responsibility lies with the other person and
Mhm.
their desire to make changes. So let's say
Mhm.
she decided, I am burning the candle at both ends. This perfectionism is like, causing problems in my relationships because I'm getting like snappy with people if things aren't going the way that I want them, just these are things that sometimes come up. And she decides, okay, I want to work on my perfectionism. So I think a way that you could support her is, you know, if she delegates to you, right?
Mhm.
Like you could be like, sure, I have time to do that.
Mhm.
If you do, right? Or,
Okay.
if she does something that, like 80% of the way instead of 100% of the way, like
Mhm.
trying not to comment on that, right? Because it's better that it's done versus
Right.
like the most perfect pristine thing. And so I think that's how we can help other people because ultimately they have to make those behavioral changes themselves. And then
Mhm.
we kind of talked about like collecting data, right? So they have to learn from like the environment's responses and that the environment is you, right? Or the environment is like, even though there was a typo on the website, it didn't hurt our sales. Like, we can look at the data,
Right.
all of those kinds of things that over time, as you collect this data, you start to learn, like, I don't have to like control this or hold on to this so tightly because the outcome is the same whether I do it at like 100% perfect or at 90%, but like go to bed at a reasonable time.
Yeah, and I also noticed like between me and her, I'm like the bigger risk taker. So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, me and her are business partners. I mean, this we do have it registered as a business for Mentally a
Yeah.
Badass. And so we are business partners. And as I was mentioning before, I'm like, we're like total opposites. Like I can be like, not I don't care about being perfect. I'm all about failing upward. What do they say? Failing to the top. Like I'm all about that. And I'm all about trying new things. Like if we mess up, we mess up. Like we learn from like that's just life. Like I'm not gonna expect things to be perfect. And at the end of the day, her and I, we didn't go to for like business classes or anything like that. The only thing that's kind of like holding us together is my background in psychology helping us a little bit. I didn't go as far as doing in like a master's, but I do have a background in college as well. And then also have a background in like social media marketing. And then she's an artist. So we each have our own like skills to bring to the table. But I think she is getting a little bit better at the risk because sometimes we can kind of butt heads when it comes to finances, like, taking risks. Because at the end of the day, it's like when you start out, you don't have backers and investors. Like you have to use your personal money, and I think that terrifies her. And that in reason, I think that makes sense. It's totally fine, especially if you are not used to that and don't really the understand I guess much of the business world. I think because I grew up with like my dad being a business owner, and I get like what can happen. I mean, there's times he's lost like thousands of dollars, and not even what he's done. Like he's had like customers that like didn't pay him like 10K once, and he had to come to court. Like I've seen the messiness there. And I don't know what her parents did, but I don't think they were business owners, but she has been getting a little bit better with that. Yesterday we were talking about investing money in, well, I'm not going to mention it because it's something we're still working on, but she was like totally cool with it. I was like, okay, we're getting like she's not like still fully like me yet, but I can tell she's warming up to it, and we can have these conversations where it's like not like an automatic no, because at one point it was challenging for us because I'm just like, if we're not putting money, then what are we gonna do? Like we're kind of stuck. Because at the end of the day, like we things cost money, like ads or just like not even just ads. Like if we do like a giveaway, like gotta pay for the stuff or the shipping. Like I try to always make things as cost effective as possible and budget friendly. But at the end of the day, it's like, you gotta do what you gotta do. But no, this is all really good feedback. And I think I'm gonna like bring it up because the thing we said, data, like I didn't even think about that. So she probably made me even think about that, but it makes sense. So
Yeah.
I
And
just
hearing you talk about this, I think it's so interesting, right? Like describing yourself as more of a risk taker, right? And it sounds like, I mean, there's benefits to both approaches, right? Like I
right,
totally hear the benefit of like, sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone and take a risk because that's what moves us forward.
right,
And I totally can see, like, for people that might be more risk averse, like wanting to pump the brakes a little bit, right? And so I'm
yeah,
glad you're kind of talking about this because what it's telling me is like you guys have different, like if she were to take the personality test that you mentioned, right? Like you guys would probably come out different on some of these traits,
I
right?
should have her take it.
Yes, yeah, you'd probably get different results. And one of the things that like I love talking about with people, this is more like on my research side versus my like clinical work side, but one of the things I love talking about with people is like busting myths about personality. So most people think like your personality, you're born with it. It's set in stone. We get, a lot of people like in their workplaces, in their HR departments take like a Myers-Briggs or take an Enneagram. And it's like, this is your type. So like you'd be good at like these work roles. And
Mm.
it's very like pigeonholing. And unfortunately, those tests are not evidence-based. Like whenever there have been studies done on Myers-Briggs, for instance, which is like $1 billion, like a corporate enterprise, they don't
Really?
actually predict career success. Um, and people often take these tests and get a different result every time they take it. And that's because personality isn't like categories, right? And so the test that you took is what we use in like our scientific studies of personality. It's called the 5-factor model. And basically, every person can kind of locate themselves somewhere on each of 5 traits. So, long story short. And all of this is leading up to the fact that, like, there have now been decades of research looking at people on these traits over time. And what we find is that our personalities change. They change as we
Mm.
age. They change. You see a lot of personality change when people move out of their like house of origin for the first time,
Mm.
because for the first time you're picking your own environment and your environment. So like the responses to you are different when you're not living, like you said, like you grew up in a school system where you were punished for making mistakes. And so maybe for a long time you were really nervous about making mistakes, but like that's getting better because now you're not in that situation anymore, right? Like because the environment is responding to you differently. And so that can cause our traits to shift. And one of the things that I've been working on in my research lab, so as like a, clinical trial researcher, is designing interventions that actually shift personality. So if people say, I want to be less susceptible to negative emotions, or I want to be more conscientious, or I want to be less conscientious and a little bit less perfectionistic, or I want to be more assertive, right? Like there's no such thing as I'm just like that. Like you can
Yes,
actually
thank
move.
you. I am what I am, like, take it as it is or something like that, like
That's a choice.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love this conversation personality because I wanna get so much deeper in, like, my personality.
Yeah.
I when I took the test, yeah, definitely very accurate, and I've noticed over the years where I'm not as extroverted like I used to be. Like, I used to be the kind of person where I wanna go to party, I have the urge to go to parties, I wanna, like, go out, like, I wanna have all these I feel like I have all these friends, for validation, like, I was just a huge extrovert, and I'm just like, "I'm good staying home watching Netflix," like, "I'm fine," like, I don't really care, like, I don't like talking to people even though I'm talking to you right now, like, that didn't come
No,
out
I
right.
feel
I
that.
was like,
I
"Oh,
like
I hate
talking to
talking to
people and I
people."
don't like talking to people.
I hate talking to people. So that's why I have a podcast, talk to strangers on the daily. But no, I mean, I see. The thing is that I like talking to people when we have these kind of conversations. I don't like just like small talk. I hate small talk. It's just like if you're gonna tell me, ask me how the weather is or what I do for. It's like just go away. Like I don't like hearing. What do you do for work? What do you do for a living? I hate that. I want people to talk with me about like my passion. I feel bad where it's like the other person, they're like, same old, the
Mhm.
usual. And I'm just like, and then I feel like I'm being annoying. You know what I mean? It's like I want to have like because I was told a lot as a child, oh, you're so annoying, let other people speak and things like that. And I do want to hear the people, but it's like kind of hard when someone doesn't like have
Mhm.
much to say. So then I
Yeah.
feel like, oh crap, I'm being so annoying. But before I forget, I really want to go into the whole personality thing. And we started talking a little bit about the extrovert. I actually grew up in New Jersey and I'm in Florida right now. So those are two completely different states. I like to think that New Jersey is like it's like its whole other country. I don't know if you ever been to New Jersey
Oh, I've been to
before.
New Jersey.
Oh, I love the way you said that. Oh, I've been to New Jersey. Wait, what part of New Jersey? Because they're all. I feel like it's
I've
so
been all through
different.
New Jersey. Like, so I'm from Connecticut originally, and
Yeah, it's right there. What am I saying? Of course, you've been to New Jersey.
I've been to
Yeah.
Jersey Shore. I've been to Princeton. I've been to Morristown.
Have you been to North Jersey? That's where I grew up.
I've been to Newark Airport.
It's like New York in a way. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, but like literally a hop, skip, and a jump. I'm in like West New York and like in those like urban areas, right? So when I was like I went to Rowan University by like Cherry Hill, and I was just driving to like an internship. I'm like, oh, this is so weird, country roads. Like, what? I see a cow over there. Like, it was so mind blowing to me. I was like, oh my god, I like lived in a bubble. Like, what the hell? Okay. Anyway, where I'm going with this is I was taken out of different environments, right? And I feel like at the end of the day, we still like have our core of like who we are in a way, kind of.
For
Does that make
sure, for
sense? Yeah,
sure.
right.
Right. And so like I think that's such a great point, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because a lot of people are really like precious about their personality, right? What's the core of me? And so the scientific definition of personality is your characteristic way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, right? So it's what you
Mm,
do, it's your point of view, like what you think, and it's how you feel in certain situations. And those are things that actually are very easy to change over time. We do it all the time in therapy. Like, those are the targets of cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, that
yeah.
just changes as people age. Personality is not your sense of humor, your likes and dislikes,
Mm,
your taste in music, right? Like,
true.
the things that like really, I think, like make us unique individuals.
Let's talk borderline personality disorder
Let's
because
do it.
I was diagnosed with that borderline. Yeah. So I guess explain to people what it is. I guess how it develops. And I guess like what's the difference between borderline personality disorder and just like regular personality development in every human?
Great question. Like, a big question. So borderline personality disorder, or BPD, it's a mental health condition that's characterized by instability.
Mm,
So ups and downs in relationships, ups and downs in emotions, ups and downs in behaviors. And it's also like a disorder that is really variable in presentation. So in the DSM, which is our like big book of mental health conditions, BPD has 9 symptoms. And in order to meet criteria for and get the diagnosis, you have to have 5 of those 9 symptoms.
mm-hmm.
And we're circling back to math, but basically the way it works out is that there are 256 different ways that you can have those 5 of 9 criteria. So I always tell people that if you've met one person with BPD, you have met one person with BPD, because all of the people now I've worked with hundreds of people with BPD over the years, and everyone's different. And
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, well, okay, so what is BPD? Answer that one. Okay. How does it develop? So, I think people aren't like totally sure. There's a couple theories, and they emphasize different things, but they kind of at least they have similar components. So one thing that puts a person at risk for not just BPD, but really any mental health condition, is the tendency to experience emotions really strongly. So
Mm-hmm.
to be emotionally sensitive. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like, I would consider myself to be an emotionally sensitive person. I cried at commercials during the Olympics, like, feel my feelings pretty strongly. I personally think it
Mm-hmm.
makes me a great therapist. He's
Yeah.
much better, much better at the whole empathy thing. But when we experience our emotions really strongly, it can be uncomfortable. And so if you have this biological tendency to feel things strongly, you have a taller task when it comes to regulating your emotions. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the messages we receive about our emotions growing up. And so a lot of people with BPD are told, it's not okay to feel that way, stop crying, don't be a baby, right? I mean, so it can, or just like kind of just are upset about something and are kind of neglected about it. Yeah,
Speaking
yeah.
my childhood. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Good
Or
stuff.
all the way up to like physical or sexual abuse. A lot of people think that like BPD is like everybody with BPD has experienced childhood sexual abuse, and that's not actually true.
Hmm.
Many people with BPD have not. And so I guess like in summary, it is just a really varied disorder. So that's what BPD is, how it develops, how is it different from normal personality development. Yeah. So that is like actually like I love that you asked that question because that is like the $1,000,000 question that I feel like people that study personality and personality disorders in like academic settings are trying to answer. The prevailing wisdom is that it's not, right? And so that we can understand this is like my nerd out topic. So forgive me and cut me off if it's too in the weeds. But I mentioned like the personality test that you took is the 5-factor model of personality. And so the 5 factors are neuroticism, so that tendency to experience negative emotions, agreeableness versus antagonism, which is the tendency to be people pleasing versus to really push other people's buttons or push people away, conscientiousness versus disinhibition, so like being perfectionistic versus being like more willing to take risks. What am I forgetting? Extroversion versus detachment. So being really outgoing versus being more, more reserved, and then openness. So being just really cool with different ways that people can express themselves with different ideas versus being more conservative and closed. And so what researchers have found is that these personality traits are on a spectrum, right? And so you can locate people with personality disorders at sort of like the poles of these different dimensions, right? And so they say that BPD is a manifestation of high neuroticism, low agreeableness, or antagonism, which I think is like kind of a judgy word, but basically what it means in like BPD context is that you don't trust other people, which makes good sense because you were maybe not treated well. And so a lot of times the behaviors that we engage in when we think people might hurt us are come across as like button pushy, but are actually just, I'm putting up this wall because I don't want you to hurt me. I don't trust you. And
Hmm.
then low conscientiousness or disinhibition, so being more impulsive. And I guess the last piece, like with normal personality versus like a personality disorder, is that there's no like line, right? Where it's like, yes, you have a personality disorder and no, you don't. Like we all are at different levels of these different personality traits.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of people saying that people with BPD are so much fun?
I've ever like heard anyone say that, but like, I mean, but I find that. So like I said, like, I mean, in my research is really focused on personality disorders. And so like I, with my team over the past couple of years have been developing a short-term treatment for BPD that we've been testing. We have grant funding from the government to
Interesting. That's
like to
intriguing.
study it. And it's called BPD Compass. It's like an
Yeah, I saw
18
that on your
yeah,
website.
yeah. And so I love working with people with BPD. I feel like they are so misunderstood. And I guess like the thing that sticks out for me when I work with people with BPD, even though their symptoms may look really different, like I said, it's really varied presentation, is that you'd be hard pressed to find a group of people just like doing the very best they can, like trying so
Yeah.
hard and like still have to try harder, still have to make changes, but they're like doing the best they can with what they have. And I mean, like respect.
When the reason I asked that is because when I went to a doc's appointment and they were just like asking like conditions and such, like medical conditions, and I was like, "Oh, do you want me to include like mental health?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, yeah, I have bipolar, I have ADHD, I have BPD." And they're like, "Wait, what's BPD?" And I was like, "Borderline personality disorder." They're like, and then this one girl was like, "Oh yeah, my friend has that. She's so much fun." I'm like, and I literally was just like, huh? Yeah, we're
Yeah.
so much fun. I mean, yeah, we're hilarious, but behind doors, we're just hating life
Right, like your good time, every 6 months when you go out and are like maybe
every
partying
six
with
months.
people with BPD, right? Like you aren't seeing like that feels fun to you if you're going out with someone, but like you
Yeah.
don't see, like you said, like behind the scenes that like some of those behaviors that like make you seem fun are actually covering up for hurt and like taking your mind off of what's really in.
That's so interesting. You know, when I had my therapist, she says I'm very disconnected from my emotions. She says that like every time which I've noticed I do now because I'm more self aware is that anytime there's like a vulnerability coming on, I just start laughing. Like I'll be like talking about my trauma and just laughing the whole way. Like if people
Yeah.
look at me like I'm crazy, well they don't look at me like I'm crazy, but like I'll be like, oh yeah, like when I was telling you, oh yeah, like all these people said this about me in childhood, and I'd just be like laughing through it the whole time. And I
Yeah,
guess it's just my brain protecting itself. But I
100%.
don't even know how I developed that. Like I don't even know. Like it's also just like involuntary. And I was recording some content for Mentally Bad. I was doing like a photo shoot for like the podcast cover, and when I had to like talk to the camera, and I think what I was doing a disclaimer, I was doing like a disclaimer for like if we're talking about like suicide or things like that, like on the for YouTube, there's like a disclaimer clip. So I was doing that, and I think there was a moment where I just like I messed up what I was saying, and so it's on camera of me messing up. And I noticed that once like I messed up, my brain automatically just like first I was like and then I just started laughing like a crazy person. And I'm like, I look at this content and I wouldn't realize that at the time what I was doing. And I look back at it and I'm just like, the switch kind of freaked me out a little bit. Because I went from like one phase to like, and then I just, as soon as I had that, it was like, I went back to, I was like, that was
Yeah,
a
I
little
mean, I think that's such
creepy.
a unique experience because most people don't have that captured on film, like a close up of our face while we're doing that to be able to like get that awareness, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. It's like a way that your brain is protecting itself, right? And you have mentioned that like you were punished for making mistakes when you were a kid, right? And like, if you expressed sadness or upset and people were like, buck up, don't be a baby or whatever, right? Like, you have to learn how to cut your emotions off really quickly so that you don't get punished. And that's often why people with BPD engage in, like self-injurious behaviors. Because I mean, most people that I work with that engage in those behaviors say, as soon as I do that, I am not feeling those intense emotions anymore. It's why people with BPD, or, it's why anybody like binge eats or uses substances or, you know, and all of this is on a continuum, right? Because I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, so I do eat when I'm stressed, and I, I don't have BPD, right? But like, this is just it's like a thing. We do think, I also like, will impulsively buy things when I'm not feeling my very best, right? And so these
Mm-hmm.
are all things that function to make us feel better.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I used to self harm throughout like all my teenage years, which, like, of course, people would call it like attention seeking and stuff
Rude.
naturally.
Yeah.
And also, like, I've noticed that people with BPD, we just like, since you're saying like with our emotions, we feel a lot more, but like our brain can go a certain way where people just don't like get, I guess. Like there's this artist that I listen to. Oh my god, I swear I bring her up like in like every seriously like every single podcast episode. But like her name is Nessa Barrett, and her first two albums, it's just god, it's hard to explain, but I relate to her so much, like with her lyrics, and it talks about like there's things about like self-esteem and just like the way like her lyrics are. It's just like not like the other people, which I don't know. It's very like out of the box thinking, and so I'm like, oh, I guess I get why I relate to her so much. Like, and I'm like obsessed with hers because we struggle with the same thing. But like, I feel like BPD. I guess. Do you think that I guess they're like part more on the artsy side? I guess.
Can be. Yeah. I mean, can be. But I think like, in my experience, anybody can have BPD.
True.
You know what I mean? And that like you being more on the artsy side, right? Like if we're talking about like personality traits again, like that would probably be like higher on openness, right? Higher on like higher creativity. And that's just something that can vary amongst people.
What do you think of like? Do you have any people that you work with that have both bipolar and BPD?
Yes. And
They're really fun.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a
Here I
lot.
go again.
That's a lot going on in the mood department. I mean, what I will say, like, and certainly, like, I'm not in a position to be like to talk about like you, but what I will say is that a lot of times BPD is misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder because
Yeah.
people don't. often it'll be like a medical doctor or like a psychiatrist that like maybe isn't as great at diagnosis, and they'll hear mood swings and they'll think bipolar disorder. And,
Yeah.
really like bipolar disorder, you have to have had a manic or hypomanic episode, and they have to last for like like at least 4 days where
Hmm.
you're up, where you don't need sleep, right? And for a lot of people that I work with that have come in and said, I have bipolar disorder, when we actually do like a structured diagnostic interview, it's like, no, you have BPD. Like your mood swings are not related to like brain changes. They're related to like something happened and now your mood
Hmm.
has changed, and something else happened and now your mood has changed. But about 20% of people with BPD have both.
Yeah, I'm at 20%.
Yeah.
Go team. Go team of all my mental health problems. But I also noticed that when and I'm prescribed a cocktail of medication to treat that. And it really works with stabilizing myself. Like completely like, wow, this is how people feel with their emotions. Like they can it's such a different experience and looking through a different lens. So that's where I kind of like, okay, I think these people were right when it came to diagnosing me. If the treatment is like doing its job. Like I don't feel like I have to jump off a bridge anymore. You know what I mean?
Totally, totally. And that's what you would expect with bipolar disorder, right? Because that is much more of like a brain chemistry kind of situation where
Mm.
like if you're taking a mood stabilizer, that should really like level out those really wild swings.
Wow. So they were right.
So yeah,
Because
so that makes good sense.
because there's
And I think like I was just going to say like I think medication can be like a really important part of the treatment plan. People
yeah.
with BPD, there aren't like approved drugs for BPD, but BPD,
Yeah.
like if you have BPD, you have a 75% chance of also having anxiety or depression. And so there are drugs
Yeah.
for that.
That kind of comes with it.
Right, exactly. It's like part of the
Yeah.
package.
Yeah, when people ask me, "Oh, do you have depression or anxiety?" I literally just say, "Listen, I got bipolar BPD. That's kind of just like an umbrella.
Covers it
I
all.
wish I just had anxiety and depression. I think that would be a very interesting life, but I just don't even like when they ask me, I guess like medical stuff. I'm like when I feel things out, I'm just like, just put this, and you can kind of get it all. No, I've literally have put that, and then the doctors will still ask me, "So you struggle with depression too?" And I'm like,
What do you think?
I was like, what do you think bipolar is? Like, what do you think that's? I mean, I know with bipolar one, you have like more mania than depression, and then bipolar two, you have more depression than mania. I have two, so I struggle more with the depression side. And when I'm not on my meds, it's like really hard for me to get out of bed, and I can be sleeping till like 6 p.m. So that's where I'm like, oh, okay, this actually is doing its job. But also I think too, it could be like from my experience when I'm under a lot of like stress or just going through a lot in my life, like that's when it flares
Hmm.
because there's moments where I like, oh, wow, like life is fine, and then I feel completely stable, and I'm like, maybe I didn't have bipolar. Like like you have like I feel like I have like those moments, and then there's moments where I'm like, oh, I feel better, and I want to go off my meds, and I've done that a couple of times. I don't want to be on meds the rest of my life, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't.
so common. I hear that like all the time.
Yeah, it's just like you don't really know like long term like what it's doing to the brain. And like so I've been trying to do other things like I'm in like this whole like program thing where a guest I had actually he's developing a program and I'm one of his guinea pigs. And I was like, yes, I'd be more than happy to do your program for free and be your guinea pig. Absolutely, please work on me. Uh, and it's just essentially it's like healing energy, spiritual, and I think it is helping a little bit because I have a need to lower my medication on one side of it. So I'm on Wellbutrin, and that one is like, an antidepressant, but also a stimulant and such. And I was on 300. Like at first, I thought you start small and you get higher. And I feel like I always had to keep upping my dose. But now I'm just like, okay, I'm getting so anxious lately. And
Yeah.
it's like
That can be a
more
side effect of
I'm
Wellbutrin.
getting more side of I mean, when I first started, I had that anxiety, but that's expected in the beginning. But I've been on this medication for over a year and I'm getting it again. So I'm just like, what is going on? And then I was talking to the guy and he was like, well, maybe because now we're really rewiring calming your brain that it's like being like, we don't need this anymore. Like what's going on? So I told my psychiatrist, and at first I think first she was first skeptical of what I was saying, and like she was doing a little bit of pushback on me, but I was like, no, like I'm not saying let's go off the medication. I'm just saying, can we just push it down a little bit so I can at least see if it's the medication that's making me this anxious? And I think I'm right because I haven't been that anxious. anymore. So, well, so far, like I definitely have been feeling less side effects. So, and I really hope with this guy saying that, I mean, hey, it'd be great eventually. I don't have to be on it. And I was able to get myself in a place where I trained my mind to not automatically go to like a dark side, which that's what my problem was. Is like, I mean, everybody has that struggle where our brain goes negative and like that's just being a human being. But he gave me like some exercises and practices to do, and let me tell you, it works. Like one thing, it's like if I have like a bad thought, you know what he told me to do? He says when you feel like you're losing, not like losing your mind, but your mind's going somewhere else and you're not being in the present moment, like look in front of you and say what color you're looking at of like a shirt or whatever, because that interrupts it and brings you back to the present moment. And I just keep doing that, keep bring
Yeah.
it back,
I mean,
and
and
now
that's a
my
muscle, right? You're like strengthening
exactly.
the muscle.
That's exactly what he's saying. And I'm like, oh my God, it's actually working. Like, what? Like, it's so simple too. And, you know, it just like, I mean, I have to keep doing a little bit better with the meditating. I've been sliding a little bit. I remember to meditate today. Because meditation, oh my God, how powerful it is. Like, I know everyone says that, but like, when you do it, you realize how powerful. I'm like, oh my God, like, why doesn't everyone just meditate? Maybe there'll be less people beeping outside. And,
Right.
you know, I actually made like a, I mean, I live in Florida, so everyone like is so it's not the best drivers and there's a lot of
Mm,
accidents. So when I'm like driving, people are also just can be very impatient. Like you know when the light turns green and you have to obviously take your foot off the brake to hit the gas, and people just get
mm.
so impatient, start beeping at you. Or like if you're trying to just like judge the time where the cars are coming and you don't want to like hit a car if it's like going faster than you didn't like judge it enough. Like I've had people beep at me and I'm like, I'm just trying to not like ram somebody. Like, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like be patient. But I feel like when people do that, they are projecting, because it's like if you are in peace with peace with yourself and you feel good, you wouldn't feel the need to feel like anger and impatient and feel like you have to do that, right? And
Like I'm
push it
in the
off to
car
someone
right
else.
now. I don't need to get like it doesn't really matter if I get there 10 seconds earlier.
Right, exactly. And so I made this like bumper sticker. And 'cause I felt like I had to. And I did it on Canva and it says, honk if you're projecting. So I just like ordered 5 of them. I'm just gonna like test the waters on Etsy and see if people buy it.
Yeah, I
Just
love
because I
it.
feel like it's so funny and I feel like I could get even funnier. And it still goes back to like mental health. Me.
So there are a couple different approaches. It used to be that people thought that borderline personality disorder was hard to treat or
Hmm.
untreatable. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of people, just there's still stigma from providers, which is a real shame because BPD is actually very treatable. There
Yeah.
are really good longitudinal studies. Some people were in treatment, some people not, but people that were in an inpatient unit diagnosed with BPD and then followed for like 25 years, what they find is that like pretty quickly, like within 5 years, people no longer met criteria for BPD. And actually, a large percentage of them are like what they called recovered, which meant like
Yeah, I've
they
heard that.
had a job and like one close relationship that was not family. And so even without treatment, BPD, like for most people, gradually improves over time.
Hmm.
In terms of treatment, the sort of like gold standard treatment, sort of the first evidence-based treatment for BPD is called DBT, dialectical behavior
Yes.
therapy. And that is like the Cadillac treatment. In its kind of standard form, it is twice a week. There's a group component where you learn skills for coping with emotions, for interpersonal difficulties, you learn mindfulness, and then there's an individual therapy component. So it's a big commitment. And from my perspective as a therapist, it's pretty expensive to get trained to provide DBT. And so
Really?
consequently, there are some states that have very few DBT providers, right? Like I used to live in Massachusetts, I lived in Boston. There's like a saturation of people that treat BPD in Boston. In Kentucky,
Hmm.
not so much, which is where I am now.
Yeah, yeah.
Listeners have sought treatment and have tried to find a DBT program. Often the wait lists are really long. The other treatments for BPD, so transference focused psychotherapy, mentalization based therapy, those are also like twice weekly, 1 year long programs. These ones focus more, that's like interpersonal, focus more on like you using your relationship with your therapist as like a way to learn what you can expect from other people in relationships. So sort of rewiring your relationship sense. And so, for me, like I said, like I like treating people with BPD. I felt like, and BPD is really variable. I wanted to create a short-term treatment.
Mhm.
Because what I found is that there are some people that really need year-long, twice weekly treatment, people that are very severe, people that are hospitalized frequently, by all means. But then there are people that are like, I kind of call BPD like relationship anxiety disorder.
Interesting.
Not like social anxiety, right? Where you're afraid you're being evaluated. It's like, I'm not sure about my relationships and I engage in behaviors that are maybe not great related to that or not taking me closer to my goals. And so we developed a short term treatment. It's like 18 sessions long, so it can be done in about 5 months. And we find this again is like kind of in the weeds, but we find significant improvements. And the magnitude of those improvements is pretty equivalent to a year of DBT.
Mhm.
So if listeners with BPD are listening to this, you can actually download the workbook that we use with our patients in our clinical trial for
Mhm.
free from my website.
That's cool.
And you can take it to your therapist and use it with your therapist. Or you can work through it on your own.
That's very generous of you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that like evidence based care should be behind a paywall.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's like my service to the people.
Your service as a human being serving.
Right, exactly.
Like your divine purpose. As we were talking about before about purpose, like, Shannon, thank you so much for coming on and teaching me and teaching my audience. You're amazing. So I want to say thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Justine. I am so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about stuff that I'm passionate about. If I'm thinking about all of the ground that we covered, loved that we were able to talk about how there's so much pressure on women, circling to perfectionism,
Hmm.
talking about personality, borderline personality, back to treatment, right? And kind of circling back to like, we can change our personality. We're not just like this. And so, right, we'll link to the BPD treatment, the personality test. And then right before this, I just sent you a link to basically like crash courses that I've developed in breaking free from overwhelm and perfectionism, which is kind of on brand for our conversation too.
You
So
sent me
all of
something?
those things are available at my website.
You sent me something?
I did right
Oh,
like seconds before we
I
got
see it. See, yeah, I just saw it. Oh, okay, cool.
on.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Have a great one.